I was born in Arizona and grew up in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
So first generation American citizen, my family, my grandmother, my mother, all came up from Mexico back when there were more porous borders and more flexibility for immigration, which is how they ended up being in the military so young too. But grew up in Pennsylvania, and then all I wanted to do at 18 was get the fuck out of Pennsylvania. And anybody in Pennsylvania hearing this right now agrees, like, how do you get the fuck out of Pennsylvania?
It's interesting. The guest earlier this week was from Pennsylvania, Western Pennsylvania, but what part?
Central Pennsylvania, right outside of Harrisburg.
Yeah, nice. In terms of your childhood, I mean, were there any big ticket items that really stuck out as being either inspirational or traumatic or affected the path and journey that you went on that were super memorable?
Yeah, man. And, I wish I had, as I tell these stories, I will try to come up with good news ones, but most of them were bad news stories.
Well, I mean,
so losing my father was not a big ticket item. I wasn't old enough to understand it, right? The first time I realized that my stepdad wasn't my father, and this sounds stupid, right? I'm a brown kid. But the first time I realized that my white ass stepdad was not my father, I was about 7 years old. And I was shocked. But at the same time, I was like, oh, well, then who was my father? And then I went into this place where it's like, oh, I had two dads, like a dad that I lived with and a dad that I never knew and whatever else. That was a little bit more of an inspiring moment. But really the childhood moment that kind of defined me in a lot of ways, I was about 12 years old. And I was arguing with my stepdad, like all teenagers do with their step-parents. And I went to my mom to try to get some comfort, to try to get some support. And I was like, Mom, Dad he's wrong. He's being unfair. This expectation is a double standard because I have two half-sisters that are his children, and they get a different rule than what I have as the other child. It's not fair. And my mom looked at me and she was like, I'm not going to help you on this. I love your dad more than I love you.
Holy shit. No way she said that.
She did. And
at 7?
At 12.
12. Fuck.
And she was like, and here's why. Because every day I wake up and I have to choose to love him. But I'm always going to love you. You're my child. It's automatic.
That's a strange way to put that.
Right?
Like it's a powerful second half. The first half is
Fucked
about
up.
as big a kick in the nuts. Like probably not how I would have said that to a child, but
it defined me, man. Absolutely defining moment. Wow. Because in that moment, I realized, one, I can't trust my parents. I can't trust them. She doesn't love me more than she loves anybody else. I don't know where I land. I thought this whole time she loved me at least equally. Yeah. But she doesn't. So I can't trust these fucking people. And if I can't trust these people, I can't trust anybody. Yeah. So, I mean, I still strongly believe that I was successful at CIA because I learned to stop trusting everybody at like 12. But then second, it was that moment that I was like, I am never doing this to my children. Yeah. I am going to have children. Fucking come hell or high water. I will have children with a woman I love, and I will make certain that every fucking day of my life, those kids know that there is nothing I put above them. Wow. Nothing. And I remember when I first met my wife and I told her this story, because she came from a very healthy, loving family that was fucked up in different ways. But I told her that story and she was like, I hope you don't ever feel like that. Like we should never feel like we have to love our children less than we love each other or that effort has any role to play in love. So I kind of knew she was the right woman then. Yeah. But especially now to this day, like, that's why it's one of the reasons we chose to homeschool. It's a huge part of why I chose to start my own business. It's why my business is an online digital business. I've built everything around my children. I left CIA to build a family. So the last thing I'm going to do now is fail to meet that moment in history for me.
Yeah. It's amazing the inspiration, the generational inspiration that people get from moments like that, but how they kind of carry over in some ways, and in some ways, like your wife, it sounds like there are people, I'm not saying her, but there are people that maybe take that for granted. They don't know that a situation like that is even possible. Like even for me, like hearing that, it's like holy shit, because I came from a pretty similar family to your wife, it sounds like, where it was like leave it to Beaver. It's like nobody ever fought, Like, I mean, it was just almost sickeningly amicable, you know. I mean, and it wasn't until I was older where I realized how fortunate I was. But that's kind of the thing, is that if you grow up with that and you don't even know any different, like, I think sometimes that can lead to not doing as right by your kids because you took it for granted and didn't realize how intentional your parents were in not making it that way. And then, you know, it builds into something like that, and then that forces that child to do way better, and it's like this weird roller coaster of outcomes. But man, that's some powerful shit. Did that have anything to do with you wanting to actually join the military and go that route?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, I tell this story, and I appreciate your encouragement and support for it. Right? I know I'm not the only one. I've met people who can relate to that story. Maybe their mom didn't look them in the face and say it. Maybe their dad didn't look them in the face and say it, but their actions showed them that, hey, I love something else more than I love you. I love my job. I love booze, right? I love my mistress, something, who knows what. But I know I'm not the only one that's felt it, because I've met those people. A lot of those people have become my ultra high net worth clients. They know exactly what that shit's like because that's what drove their ambition to become so much bigger and so much more than they ever thought they could be. Yeah. But joining the military was my chance to shed the legacy that had been given to me on a fucking dirty napkin, right? Like this history of violence, of broken families, of, you know, of misaligned loyalty, like all that shit in one fell swoop with the strike of a pen, I could belong to something bigger. And that's how I saw my opportunity to join the military and how I saw my opportunity to join the Air Force. And even though I wasn't excited to be a soldier and serve my country, I was very excited to fucking hit the Nintendo reset button and start over.
Yeah, that's wild. And did you go from high school right into the Air Force? Yeah,
so I was accepted into the Air Force Academy coming out of high school. Turns out that when you are from a rural school, there's not a lot of competition for people who are trying to like go get full ride scholarships.
Did you play any sports? Did that have anything to do with it?
I did. So I was active in a lot of stuff because I didn't want to be home, right? There was no reason to be home. So I did everything I could not to be home. I got lucky in a lot of ways that because I was part of cross country and track and field and fucking, you know, math club and chess club and the band, I just didn't have a bunch of friends who were scumbags. Yeah. If I would have had scumbag friends, I would have gotten into scumbag shit for sure. Yeah. But I just happened to have good friends because I was part of these good clubs. And that set me up for a competitive bid for the Air Force Academy.
Not a lot of gangbangers in the band, right?
It's true, right?
What did you play?
I played the clarinet.
Nice.
And then I ended up being the drum major because it's hard to look masculine when you've got a little wood stick in your hands.
Yeah. I mean, to each their own, I guess, right? All right. So you go to the Air Force Academy, Colorado Springs. Was that like a huge culture shock coming from central Pennsylvania and the life that you'd been living?
You know, in some ways, yes, and in other ways, no. Colorado was a huge culture shock. It's very different than Pennsylvania. But the academy lifestyle was shockingly not that much of a big change. My stepdad, my stepdad was a Vietnam vet and was super strict. And that was part of the reason for the conflict in the house, was because I was held to very strict military discipline type of standards for my hair, for my chores, for how I worked with my parents and everybody else, where my sisters got a pass.
Was he physically hard on you?
Yes, he was physically hard on me because if you remember, so I'm 44, it's the late 80s, early 90s, spanking your kids, hitting your kids. My dad spanked us with a belt, spanked me with a belt. So I was like belted. And that was commonplace. Like that was, yes, there was a movement to try to end child abuse, but it was still happening all the time. So it wasn't until I think I was 8th grade that I got a hell of a whooping. And it was the first time I got a whooping where I didn't cry. Which, of course, if you remember when that happened, well, that may not have happened to you. But for anybody who knows what that feels like, the first time you get a beating where you don't show weakness, the beating continues, because that's like the moment that your parent realizes they don't have that kind of power anymore. So I end up going to school, 8th grade, phys ed, because phys ed was still allowed in schools then. And I've got these fucking welts and bruises all over me that are shaped like a belt, right? And up my back and the back of my legs. And a teacher sees it, pulls me into the principal's office. I tell the principals like it's no thing. Like, oh yeah, Got in an argument with my dad. He beat me with a belt. And they were like, he did what? See, he beat me with a belt. Fucking no kidding. The police show up the next day at the house and they have a conversation with my dad and my mom, and it all stopped then. To this day, my mom still says that never happened.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you get along with her well now?
It's a mixed bag. Like, I love my mom, like all sons love their moms. I love my mom. And my mom did the absolute best that she knew how to do. But I'm also 44 years old. Like, I'm not stupid anymore. I'm not a kid. Yeah. I realize my mom may have become a mom, not because she chose to.
Right.
It may have been expected of her. It may have been required of her. It probably was. It was just what a good wife did, to have kids with the first husband, have kids with the second husband. But she always wanted a career. She always wanted power. She always wanted women's liberation. She always wanted feminism. She always wanted a very different existence than I think the one that she actually had. So I have to respect that. I get that, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so living under the roof of the Air Force Academy, where people were in my face and I had structured everything and limited time to eat and yes sir, no thank you sir, that was kind of normal for me.
Yeah. Did you enjoy it there? I mean,
hated it.
Really?
Hated every fucking minute of it.
Oh shit.
Yeah, I hated my time at the Air Force Academy. Every time I get a chance to talk to anybody who's considering going to a military academy,
that good.
I tell them, do not do it. So, it's not necessarily because of the academy. It's not that the academy itself is doing anything wrong. Whether it's West Point or Annapolis or the Air Force Academy, it's traditional. That's what they do. They create military leaders. They call themselves a leadership laboratory. They call themselves all this other bullshit, right? But the truth is, who you are when you graduate at 22 years old is completely ineffective for the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Like, you've had meals taken care of, your education taken care of, you've been taught to follow orders, you've been taught to fall under a bureaucracy, you've been taught to fall under a hierarchy, you do not question the hierarchy, you follow a code of honor that isn't really what you follow, you just learn how to lie, cheat, and steal your way around the code of honor. That's the reality of what happens in order to graduate those institutions.
Yeah.
The average person who goes to University of Florida or Georgia Tech or fucking Villanova, when they graduate, they're real fucking people. They know how to work for a paycheck. They know how to pay taxes. They know how to operate a cell phone bill. They know what car is too expensive to buy and what car isn't too expensive to buy. Like, they have real world skills that when you grow up in those core foundational young adult years in a protected institution like a military academy, you don't get any of that shit.
Societal skills.
Correct.
Yeah.
Like, what it means to really be an American.
Yeah.
Not just an American soldier,
yeah,
but really live and breathe the freedoms and the sacrifices and the responsibilities of an American citizen.
Yeah. I mean, obviously it makes sense why they do that, because they need you to be that. Was that kind of your takeaway even at that age? Because that's a pretty surprising perspective for a 22-year-old to realize, in that moment. Is that what you thought even then?
No, it was funny because, all I could see then, I was a bad cadet. I was not good in the military. I will be the first one to raise my hand. Everybody who knows me will agree. I struggled with all of the rules. I struggled to prioritize the way they wanted me to prioritize. I tried to have a life. I was always chasing tail. I was always trying to make friends. I was always trying to find a party to go to. Like, I wanted to do something to experience life. Whereas what they wanted us to do was shine your shoes, iron your uniform, keep your bed corners tight, right?
Yeah.
That was the world that they wanted, and it was not the world I was in. So as a result, I barely graduated, 2.7 GPA and whatever else. Still graduated, still called lieutenant at the end of the day like everybody else.
Yeah.
But it was very different. What the moment that it struck me was when I left the Air Force Academy and my first assignment, two fucking things struck me. My first assignment at the Air Force, was to be an instructor at the Air Force Academy.
Really?
How the fuck, man? How do you have a 2.7 GPA? You hate your entire existence there. Everybody at the institution hates you also. But when the higher ups take a look at your file, they're like, you know what we need this person to do? We need them to teach more people. Wow. So it was fucking crazy. So I ended up in the phys ed department. I was a varsity fencer while I was there. I was a decent athlete while I was there. So that's the department they put me under. I served under a naval commander who used to call me boy. Like,
Jesus.
Get your work done, boy. Open the door, boy. It was fucking crazy. But my point is, it wasn't until I had to find an apartment and I didn't know how to do that.
Yeah.
And then I had to pay a monthly bill to rent the apartment. I didn't know how to do that. I had to like rent a cell phone. I had to pay a cell phone bill. I didn't know how to do that. Pay car insurance. I didn't know how to do that. And I'm like, what the fuck have I had my head up my ass my whole life? And then I realized like, oh no, my girlfriend that I just met, she's been doing this since she was 18. Her mom, her dad, her guidance counselor, her somebody taught her, this is what you have to do to this, and this is how you fill this out, and this is how you balance a checkbook, and we didn't learn any of those skills, man. Yeah. So I had to figure all that shit out when I was 22 years old, and and then in my Air Force career, I'm meeting ROTC graduates, I'm meeting OTS graduates, I'm meeting these other people, and they all have shit figured out, and they have their heads on straight, and they're not overwhelmed or confused by stuff, and I'm sitting here and I'm still like, well, shit, man, like I'm still chasing tail. But I'm also trying to figure out why my credit score is fucked, because I was told I had to take a loan in my junior year with USAA. And now I owe the world $20,000, but I only make, a paycheck of $700 a week. So I don't really know how this is supposed to work, where all of them are like, oh, well, you're fucked before you even know it.
Yeah. Was there anything you enjoyed about the Air Force Academy?
So it was, as funny as this is, the really good cadets, like the people who really succeeded there, I've got a handful of people, right? Kenny Horton, Peter Euler, Eric Lathrop. There are these guys who, they were so good at being cadets. They sacrificed everything. Stayed up late, doing their homework, polishing their shoes, ironing their shirts. They were unflappable fucking people. Like they just couldn't be brought down. They couldn't be distracted like I was distracted, and they couldn't be torn down by the process, and they always tried their best, always, right? And I love these guys to death, and they're absolute inspirations. They're all three of them senior military officers now, but all three of them, they all have a different opinion about the Air Force now, right?
Yeah.
So I left as soon as I could after 5 years of service. They went on to make careers out of it. And now they're at different stages of their career, and they've come to make certain, they've had the same realizations that I had, only
way down the road. Yeah. So does that constitute the thing you enjoyed about the Air Force Academy?
It was the good guys,
okay.
The good people, right?
I gotcha.
Because they really are inspirational. Yeah. There hasn't been a day of my life that hasn't gone by where I don't reflect on the young faces in my memory of these, of people like the three that I just mentioned, where you're like, Jesus, they just didn't stop trying. Whereas that's the Yoda thing, right? Do or do not. They did it every day.
Yeah.
Where many of my days at the Air Force Academy, I just said, fuck it.
Yeah. Just checking the box.
Yep.